take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited today. 150 episodes. That's something to celebrate. What better way to celebrate than have a star quarterback that led USC to a Rose Bowl championship victory over, I would say, probably at the time of that happening, I was probably a Michigan fan back in those days. I really loved the Hail to Victor song. He took it to him in the Rose Bowl game. He was also a standout quarterback, first-round draft pick for the, at that time, that's right, Los Angeles Raiders. Go back and look. It really, truly did happen. Through a series of unfortunate events, eventually would end up leaving the Raiders due to some drug issues and some off-the-field issues. But now he has really dedicated his life, I think, to not only helping others, but really trying to do what I'm all about, which is walking in someone else's shoes and really interacting on an authentic level through his art, through his speaking. Help me welcome in the great Todd Marinovich. Todd, how are you today?
I'm good, Neil. You're too kind. And your intro is awesome. I can remember, because I was around USC, it's my earliest memories since my grandfather and mom and dad and aunts and uncles, they all went to USC. But I was always a fan of that Wolverines fight song. I mean, it's probably, if not the best, one of the best. And for me, being an artist, I always was a uniform guy. And I don't think there's anything better than the Michigan Wolverine helmets. And when you know the story behind it, when it's the pattern of the old leather, back in the day, leather helmets. And I think just with this history and the colors, I was so stoked to play in that game against Michigan. I can't even tell you, especially when we got to wear our whites, because I've always been a fan of wearing away jerseys, and they got to wear their navy blues. And what a epic setting.
Go back and I watched that. I probably remember watching that. I mean, I was like 10 at the time, I think, when you're playing in it. I'm 41 now, so obviously some time has passed. But I do believe I remember watching that game, thinking to myself, who is this guy? Why is USC starting a freshman? I mean, there were so many, I didn't even get the dynamic, and, I didn't know about you and your dad. Of course, back in those days, I didn't know.
Right.
But I have talked to a number of my friends that are older than I am, and I was asking them about you and how many remembered you. And believe it or not, most people remember you that are above the age of 40. So there it is. So there we go. But I'm excited to have you on today, Todd, for a variety of reasons. Before we get into that too much, I'm really excited to ask you this question because I think it's a good question to ask. What size shoes do you wear?
I've fluctuated, and I think as I'm getting older, I like a little more room in my shoes. So I wear anywhere between a 13 and a 12. It could be a 12 and a half. And it really depends on the shoe, because every shoe is that I wear is a little bit different. And I like the old school Pumas, but theirs are really narrow, and so I have to go a lot bigger with those. Adidas run pretty true to size. Converse run big. So you'll find 13, 12 and a halves, 12s in my closet.
Well, you mentioned some name brands there. Is there a brand or a style that you like more than another? Like, I'm a big Nike Jordan guy. I'm obviously the Carolina stuff, being that a variety of things with the Jumpman aspect. But do you have a brand or a style that you like?
I do like the old Adidas. I think if I were to have to go with just one brand, it would be Adidas. When I came out of college, I signed with Converse, and Converse styled me out in such a way that I love their Chucks. Like, who doesn't? They sent me an array of colors. I must have had 12 pairs of low-cut Chuck Taylor suede rainbow. It got my attention, and I was super stoked about them, because actually I even have one of those pairs left, and that was a long time ago. We're talking 30 years. So that tells you something about their shoes. They're pretty well made.
That's fantastic. I can't wear Chuck Taylors, partly because I've suffered from, maybe you've never had to deal with this, I hope not, plantar fasciitis.
No, but I've heard of it.
Thank God.
Yeah.
It is the worst of the worst. I used to run a lot, and actually I just started running again recently, and so I'm really hoping it doesn't come back, but it can be like crippling.
Yeah,
so it's just terrible.
I get it.
So you got to make sure you have good shoes with a good art.
probably 9 to 10 months out of the year, I'm in flip flops. And so when I go, it's coming up here about November, I'll squeeze into some shoes just for, because it gets a little cold. However, when I do, once in a while, I'll get a freaking ingrown toe. And I don't know if it's anything like what you're dealing with, but any foot problem can ruin a day.
It really can. You know, I know growing
Yes.
up, you're still in that LA kind of Southern California area. So I don't remember, and I grew up in Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, but I don't ever remember being in pants. Like, except on church, like Sunday mornings, my mom would make us wear pants and stuff. You know, years later, I'm on a church staff, and my mom came to visit the church. She saw me on a Sunday morning wearing shorts, and she about had a heart attack. She goes, "You don't wear shorts to church on Sunday?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I do now."
Yeah, it's
I'm
shorts,
a grown adult now. I can wear
all year round.
Yeah. So Todd, as I mentioned at the onset, like I am excited to have you come on, and I think one of the questions I really wanted to lead off with our time together today is you have this massive story. I mean, anybody can go chronicle it, watch it. You had a great documentary, 30 for 30 with ESPN. They did a fantastic job. The Marinovich Project. Your story is chronicled so many different ways that people can go and listen to it and hear about it. But I think that the thing that I really was excited about, again, in talking to you today, was if we could go back to that, any of the moments that you've had in your lifespan, has there been that moment for you where at your core knew you weren't enough? And if so, maybe talk about that first.
Good question, Neil. You know, it goes back as early as I can remember. There was a feeling, and I just got to start off before I start bringing up old memories, is that what I've come to realize and totally understand is that both of my parents did the best they could with the information that they had at the time. And I think my dad has gotten way more negative criticism than he really deserves, because I think there were far worse parents out there, and I consider myself really lucky. Even though walking in my shoes was difficult and extremely challenging times, and especially as a young boy, the thing that my dad struggled with was differentiating between working with an all-pro, say, defensive lineman and working with a 8-year-old. It was 110% all the time. And you either would die for Marv or you didn't want anything to do with him. There was no middle ground. And so early on, I felt, and this, you know what, this could be not even true, but what I felt was I needed to perform so the living environment in our home life was relaxed and comfortable. I felt, because of certain situations and experiences that I had, when I didn't perform well, it was carried back into the home, and my sister got the brunt of it. My mom got the brunt of it. And obviously I did. And so even if that wasn't true, 100% true, but that's the way I remember it. And that's the way I put a tremendous amount of pressure on myself to go out. And this is through a time in my life where I shouldn't have been really considering any of this. And it changes the way that I parent my kids, for sure. And if that's the lesson that I needed to learn to kind of break the mold or the history of this family history, then so be it. Because I have a soft place in my heart for kids, and I've always had that. And I always knew that I've been extremely fortunate not to have kids at an early age. Like a lot of my SC buddies and just friends in general, I got an extremely late start, and thank God, because I just was not ready to be a parent. And what I did, which I suggest to all people, is get a pet. And I did that. And I had a relationship with a black lab named Mims for 12 years that changed my life. And then I got to find out how much he changed my life and how much I loved him when he passed away. And that's the sad thing about pets. What a learning experience that was. So to answer your question, I have been I had that feeling that you asked about, feeling not good enough, as early as I can remember. And I just kind of, that's for the most part, it's as early as, kindergarten, first grade. Yeah.
How old are you now? Help us with that, if you don't mind sharing.
Gosh, you know what's crazy, Neil? When I don't look in the mirror,
Yeah.
and I'm not a mirror guy,
Yeah.
but when I see a reflection, I'm like, holy shit, who is that old guy?
Yeah, who is he?
And I'm 52.
You're 52. Okay. That's what Google said. I just want to make sure Google got it right. 'Cause you're a July 4th guy, right? You're a July 4th. Okay. That's what I thought. All right. So I'm talking to some friends last night. Was so excited. Like I think I was telling everybody like I could. I didn't want to tweet it or anything like that because I'm not that guy on Twitter. But I was telling a bunch of people that I know and I trust, and I, was getting some feedback from people like, hey, if you could ask him, what would you ask him? Kind of thing.
That's cool.
As an interviewer, I still am an up and coming. I'm not Dan Patrick, who is my role model, and I know you've been on Dan's show a number of times, and it kills me that you know Dan Patrick that intimately that you can paint him pictures. So maybe one day, Todd, I can get a Marinovich original in my studio. So maybe one day. But back to you. I think part of what compelled me to reach out to you was there's this moment during the documentary where you go to your mom. Your mom's actually retelling the story. But you go to your mom at one point, you have tears in your eyes, and you say, one day I just want to be Todd. And she's crying as she's kind of recanting this story during the documentary. And it was in that moment, I'm not kidding you, I pulled out my phone and I go, I got to find Todd Marinovich. I don't know how, I don't know where, but he is perfect for this You're Not Enough series, because I just thought he has got to struggle with not being enough. And I appreciate you answering that question right out of the gate. With that, I'm wondering about this too. Has doubt ever creeped into your heart? Has there ever been moments where you maybe doubted your ability, you doubted your, artistic ability, doubted your relationship ability, doubted you in general? Has doubt ever been a role in Todd Marinovich's life?
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know about anybody else, but if they say no, I have a hard time believing them. So if I'm completely honest, which I am today, and it's what I practice every 24-hour period, and it's the most liberating thing as a human being I've ever experienced, because I had I don't know if anybody can relate, but talk about skeletons and secrets. I had so many. And then finally, because of my life experiences and these things called consequences, I really had to take a look at my life and make changes. And that one simple, but not easy, is this truth piece that, like I said, it's the most liberating thing I've experienced. Doubt, I have senior moments, even though I'm 52. I have had a lot of concussions. And that's just not a disclaimer. When I go to the doctor's office and they say, have you had a concussion? There's not enough space on that freaking sheet, right? As I get older, you know what show I've tuned into and I just freaking love, because they're artists, but they're comedians. It's the same thing. It's just a different medium. And it's Seinfeld's show about drinking coffee, because I'm a coffee guy. And I love them, whoever he has on, and they're just people talking about life. 100% of them have this doubt. And it's so good to see that somebody like Eddie Murphy, like the king of, comedy through my era. Before that, it was Richard Pryor, but Eddie held the title, and he still has this freaking doubt. And it's a human emotion, and it is stifling, especially with artists and especially with athletes. I've experienced, my life has been riddled with it. And the only thing I can say that really is the great equalizer, it will totally consume you if you sit in this doubt, is action, and not listening to that voice in my head that's the critic, and putting doubt into my mind. And so through athletics, I mean, every level that I went to, when I went from high school to USC, I had doubt. I'm playing at, I felt like the big time when I went up to USC, and there's guys coming in from all over the country, and they're the best at their position. And I came in 5th on the depth chart, just like I did in high school. And so when you're not the guy, like, there's doubt. Every duck that I threw and every spiral that they threw, I just was like, oh my gosh, maybe I don't belong. I went from playing at SC, and it was an injury that got me playing at SC. I wasn't going to be the starter my redshirt freshman year. It was the starter went down with a week to go in training camp before our opener, and it was a season-ending injury, and then I'm the guy. And so when I left SC and went to the Raiders, they had a quarterback named Jay Schrader who could spin it in a way that I felt less than. I was like, God, if I need a gun like this to play at this level, I'm in freaking trouble. And if it wasn't, I'll tell you this, if it wasn't for the people around me, guys, and it really, with the Raiders, it was the USC connection, because if you didn't know, Al Davis loves Trojans, and he was a coach with SC. And so he loves to bring Trojans on his team. And so when I was on the team, we had, our center was Don Mosbar. He was a Trojan. Everybody knows Marcus Allen and Ronnie Lott and Ricky Ellison. And they rallied around me, and they gave me that confidence. And so when guys like Ronnie and I got to practice against Ronnie, because him being a safety, and my first year, I was the practice squad guy. So I was playing the other team's quarterback the whole year. He would counsel me and really coach me and encourage me. And when he took me aside, it was him and Roger Craig, another, I don't know if Roger's in the Hall of Fame, but he probably should be, but just a great human, both those guys. And they said, and they just had come down from the 49ers winning freaking 4 Super Bowls or whatever. And they said, Todd, if you were up in that Niner system, Joe's records would not be safe. And so that's flattering as hell when a Hall of Famer like Ronnie is sharing that. And I believed him, because that was my style of play. I wasn't going to knock you down with it, but I was going to place it and put it in a good spot and throw it on time. And that just wasn't the Raiders scheme of things back then. It was, drop 7 steps back, hold the ball, let the guy get down the field, which Jay could do. That just wasn't my style of play.
Yeah, Roger Craig is not in the Hall of Fame, and that really is a travesty in my opinion, because he was a great running back, even in those Niner teams. It was good for you guys too. You had a great Raider team. I was looking back.
Yeah.
But, you're handing the ball off to Eric Dickerson. You're handing the ball off to Marcus Allen. You on the other side of the ball, you had Ronnie Lott, who is famously breaking his finger and putting it back in place and doing crazy stuff like that. I mean, Ronnie Lott was a beast, and then you go to your SC days, you're playing with Sayal, and, you had great guys like that, and Tim Brown going back to the Raiders again, Willie Golt. I'm thinking, how are you not successful? That was what I kept thinking. Sorry. Judging. That was my judgment seat. So, but you talk about,
that's the thing.
You talk about,
it was an all-star team.
Yeah, it really was. But you talk about truth in what you were just talking about, how you had guys kind of speaking truth into your life. You had Ronnie Lott kind of pulling you aside under his wing, so to speak, speaking into your life, encouragement. Roger Craig, likewise, right? Help me with this, Todd. What is a truth that you believe in?
Treating people kindly and authentically without judgment. And the thing is, this is super difficult for me, because growing up, just to give you a background, I was in describe it as almost warlike at times, because my dad was a rageaholic. There were moments of just complete fear being a little guy around a big human, because when we're little, parents are giants. And people forget, and I forget that. And so I'm careful with my voice level around my kids. But being in that environment, I was hypersensitive and aware of facial expressions, to the point I felt like that was my a way to survive, a survival mechanism. And so what has that done? Being a son of a perfectionist, I am a critic, and it's been a challenge to let go of that. And I'm a judger. And what I found, I am wrong 100% of the freaking time. And you would think, Neil, after a track record like mine, when I look back at, I'm judging this person for whatever it may be, what he's wearing is one, or what he's even saying. And until I actually get out of my comfort zone, listen, and make a connection with this person, I'm completely wrong. I have this story made up in my freaking head that isn't true, and all it is doing is creating separation. So something that I work on a daily basis is, even if my head is telling me these lies about somebody, it's up to me to break that separation, because my head's creating it, and connect heart to heart. And that is magic. I could do that all freaking day long, but it's not easy, because it takes being vulnerable. And who wants to freaking do that when they wake up in the morning? Like, I'm going to get vulnerable today. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of people's agenda. But for me, it is. because I feel so good when I can break a barrier, and especially it's one that I've created.
I love that a lot. Just the idea
Thanks.
of breaking the barrier. And I think, again, you're really talking about empathy in that regard, at least what I'm hearing in
Yes.
that, is that you really want
Yes.
to have this kind of empathetic heart, this understanding, this I'm not going to come from a seat of judgment, that I really am going to try my very best to walk in their shoes. I mean, it's a show plug, but it kind of fits there.
You know what, Neil? The word is a hypocrite. If I have been so hurt by people doing that to me, having this preconceived idea, they've never met me, they've just read a bunch of stuff that's a lot of it's not even true by my own doing. Because like I said, I growing up and throughout my early career, I felt like I had to lie for the safety of myself. And it created a shitstorm that I had no freaking clue it was going to create. And it started out with a People magazine article when I was I think 14. And it was a train that I felt like I couldn't stop, and I was just along for the ride. But now when I felt these feelings of people totally judging, the only thing that I can do is not do that shit. The number one thing I think is the awareness about it, because I always will fall short. I'm aware of it today, and it's because of my experience. It's because of being judged, where I now can flip the script and go, okay, so I can't change anybody. Well, how can I change? And it's what I just described, just connecting with people one-on-one.
That's awesome. I got to ask you a couple things, playing stuff. I would be amiss if we didn't talk Raider football, which, by the way, it pained me to watch Raider football the other day. I just want to tell you, not a Raider fan. I'm wearing my old school Seahawks shirt today, but I even watched an SC game recently because I was trying to get in the Todd Marinovich headspace. So, but I want to take you back to,
careful.
I know, right? Danger, right? I want to take you back to October 19th, 1992. You maybe not remember that, but I'll help you if you don't.
Okay.
The article, it says, Raiders offense lost starting quarterback Todd Marinovich, tough name to say sometimes, Marinovich, to a sprained knee on a Cortez Kennedy sack 7.5 minutes into the game. You're in the Kingdom. Can you tell me about that? Just as a Seahawks fan, I got to ask you that question.
There you go. I remember it like yesterday. I sure can. And the thing that first comes to mind, it was the loudest place I've ever been in.
Hold on a second. Louder than Arrowhead? I just, for a Chiefs fan, was it louder than Arrowhead?
Way, not even.
So Todd Marinovich is saying
comparable.
Kingdom is louder than Arrowhead.
It's the loudest place.
Thank you. All right. That was for a Chiefs fan, a friend of mine. So there we go. Keep going, Todd.
Yes, in our country by far. And so people don't realize how loud that can be, especially if they're watching it on home and have never been inside a dome. Stadiums get loud, but domes are something to experience. And so I was trying to change the play, if you can believe it. And you're not going to have too much success if there isn't preparation with signals and things like that. And I can belt out a pretty good number and audible. However, when my guard, Steve Wisniewski, is turning to me and putting his hand to his ear, and he's only a couple feet away, I knew I was in a bad situation. And when you do change the play or audible, it changes the snap count. And it went from 1 to 2. I got a lot going on in my head at this moment, right? I'm dealing with this crowd noise, and there's a gentleman right across the football who you mentioned is Cortez Kennedy. And what a load.
Hall of Famer, by the way. Just want to put that out there.
And he can get off the football. And most, you know what, if you have a trait as a defensive lineman, that's the one you want. You want to be able to come off the ball. And so I went under the center. I went on one. And Don Mosbar, SC, just veteran, instead of not snapping it like most centers do when the quarterback jumps and then it's a penalty in an embarrassing situation, he just snapped it. And so when I got the ball, Cortez had already pulled a swim move on Don because he was put in a bad position. It was all bad from the gate. And the next thing I know, I have this Hall of Famer on my back, and I'm just trying to go down in a way that is going to be less painful. My foot kind of stuck in that turf, and he gave me a little twist. And if it was in today's game, the whistle would have been blown immediately. However, it was 30 I can't even believe it, 30 years ago. And so I suffered not a major knee injury, but a definite tweak at the left knee, and I was done for the day. But what an experience, because the stadium doesn't even exist anymore, and there's not very many domes out there that can even compare to that old Kingdom.
You know, it's funny about that Seahawk team, too, is there's a guy that got drafted before you on that roster that's not even playing in that game. That's Dan McGuire.
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I don't want to bring up a sore subject.
No.
But as a Seahawks fan, like, again, going back and looking at that draft, because I know Favre was in that draft with you as well when you came out with the Raiders. For me, I was like, are you kidding me? The Seahawks went with Dan McGuire over Todd Marinovich? Yeah. I mean, we could have Brett Favre, too. I mean, I guess I should.
Right.
But the reason why I bring all that up is because during that time, I think was the first time, and maybe it wasn't the first time, but it seemed like there was a lot of media attention around you about denying your drug issues, denying failed drug tests, that the Raiders had kind of kept that a secret in a sense. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. I found this crazy article where it talks about you. Let's see if I can find it exactly. There's a quote in here that says, there are so many amazing stories that are being told in the LA Times about you. And you said this, you're quoted as saying, it's a one thing that you just got to get used to. People just making up stories about you. If, keyword there, if it is untrue, that's not what they pay me to do. They pay me to play football. That's the fun part. It's dealing with all the other BS that comes along with it that you don't like. But I want to play a little clip for you. This is after you lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, speaking of Arrowhead.
Yes, I remember.
You lost 10-6, 1991. Mm-hmm. So this is your first year. You're a rookie, just lost a playoff game, wild card playoff game, and this is Lynn Swann, the great Lynn Swann.
There were a lot of people wondering whether Todd Marinovich could play NFL football after a short college career. You feel like you've answered?
I hope so, but if not yet, they got a lot to see yet. They don't know what's coming.
I think people certainly believe you are the future. Sorry about the loss, but we know we're going to see some great games for you later on.
So you say in there's a lot of great things still left to come. I'm wondering about that. Did you really believe that, or do you feel like you were lying in that moment?
You know what? I think I got chills because I don't even think I realized it, but I'm right, because I think the best things are yet to come. And it's truly off the field. I really believe that the destiny of my career was not to play 10 years in the NFL and throw for whatever. It was an experience, a different one than most have, given me an opportunity because of what I did to reach people in a different way that have issues like I've had and that need somebody or some thing to inspire, to give them hope, because it is a epidemic that a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about, but it's something that it's my duty to talk about.
Yeah, I watched your eyes in the interview. Mm-hmm. By the way, first off, to be interviewed by Lynn Swann's pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm just saying, I know that's his job. That's pretty cool. I mean, you've been interviewed by a number of famous people that I'm really like, oh my God, he's been on that show. Oh my God, he's been interviewed by this person. Oh, it's just incredible to me as a sports fan. I'm like, wow. But I say that because as I'm watching the interview, it's the YouTube clip. I borrowed it from YouTube. In that, I'm looking at your eyes. Like, I'm not listening to your words. I'm watching your eyes, as creepy as that sounds.
Yeah.
But I see that your eyes are kind of glassy. They're kind of watery. And I'm thinking, was he using then? Were drugs in his system at that moment? I mean, I don't know.
Oh, probably. I wasn't a guy to wake up and get loaded on game day, but I was not 100. I was not firing on all cylinders for sure. And I was emotional after that loss for sure. There was tears welling up because I really hated the Kansas City Chiefs. My dad was funny because he was a defensive lineman. And so I grew up knowing what I was getting myself into about playing football and especially the down front. And he would say, I don't know why you rile these guys up and are talking to them, because they'll take plays off. And that's just the nature of the game. Guys aren't going to go 100% on every play. But if you talk to them, they are. And my dad was right. And there were times that I should have kept my mouth shut. And I was young. I think it comes with age, that this feeling of an invincibility. And I totally caught that bug. And I'm also playing with great players. And I wouldn't have been popping off to any of these guys if I didn't have Don Mosbar, Steve Wisniewski, Max Montoya, all these Marcus coming up and blocking. If I didn't have this support around me, I wouldn't have said a word. But I like to talk, and I always have. It makes it a little more exciting.
I always wanted to be a quarterback. I'll tell you the reasons why. One, the game is on your shoulders.
Yep.
You're in control.
Yep.
You're in charge.
Yep.
You're the boss. You're calling the play. You're telling people where to go. The game really rests and falls on your shoulders.
Yes.
I wanted that pressure.
Yeah.
I was literally, I think when I hit high school, I was 6'2" at that point, but I was like 140. I was a rail. I was a runner rail. Like, people thought I was an anorexic, concentration camp kind of kid. So the thought of me playing football, it was not in the cards. But I do remember our high school fight song was Hail to the Victors. So it was Michigan's fight song. So that's why I was also excited about that. Maybe back in those Michigan days, as I knew the high school that I would one day go to was Hail to the Victors. But running out of that tunnel, throwing that pass, playing pickup games is one thing, but playing on Friday night is a whole different ball game, I'm sure. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you, I always had an aspiration to be a quarterback, but I know that wasn't always your dream, right? You just wanted to be an athlete.
I'm trying to think the very first sport. It wasn't soccer, and that's a lot of kids' early sport is soccer, and I get it. It wasn't for me. It was basketball. Basketball is my number one love, and it always has been. I was okay. I was a really good shooter. I like to stand behind that three-point line, and that three-point line came into effect from my junior year to my senior year. And I know I shot more threes than anybody in the county. I can't tell you how many I made, but I know I was not shy shooting the basketball. And I just loved the game. And it really transfers over to other sports. I think it is the best game for young people, just for pure athleticism. You could take any forward in basketball and make an all-pro tight end out of them. I really believe they have just the sense and body positioning that is really, you can't teach it unless they play hoops. So, yeah, it wasn't to play quarterback. My first year of flag football, I was a receiver. I didn't want to open my mouth. It wasn't in my personality to tell anybody anything. And my sister described me as terrifyingly shy. And so the last thing I wanted to do was come into the huddle and tell guys what to do. And if it wasn't for our quarterback going down with an injury, I would have maybe never have done it. Who knows?
Is that in flag football? The quarterback goes down with an injury, and so that's your SC story as well, right?
Pretty much. Yes,
and that's your NFL story as well.
Yes.
That's creepy.
Yes, it is.
That's creepy. I'm putting all the pieces together now.
I know. And I hadn't even thought about it until now.
That's awesome. I want to go back to another game for you. November 8th, 1992, 8:20 left, second quarter. You guys are down to the Eagles or the Eagles. You're at Veterans Stadium, the old Veterans Stadium, 10-0. Probably freezing cold because it's Philly.
It was cold, yes.
And you have a pretty good jacket on. You were 3 for 10 that day, 25 yards, and you had 3 interceptions.
Brutal.
Did you know in that moment when Art pulled you that it was over?
No, I was pissed because I have come from similar situations of having a horrendous first half and coming back and making up for it. Not to say that was going to happen that day in Philly. I just knew I wasn't playing in California anymore when I stepped out of that tunnel, and they had a stuffed number 12 with a Raider helmet on it hanging from a noose on fire. And I was like, this is an environment that is very hostile. And I step out on the turf, and it's the worst carpet I'd ever played on. Anytime that the brick dust, because of the Phillies playing there, they would just put a patch over that brick dust and the seams would not match up. It was the worst turf I've ever been on. And it was cold. And they had a guy staring at me named Reggie White. So there were a lot of variables that were out of my control. And it was just one of those days that happen when you play a high level sport.
The crazy part about that, just to help, you don't take another snap in the NFL again. Like that literally is your last game.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I went back and looked. I mean, you can fact check me yourself, but I don't think you take another snap because Jay Schrader comes back in, basically finishes the season out, and you're done.
Yeah.
You're done with the Raiders after that.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went back and looked because I was like, when was his last moment, in the NFL? So I think if I did my research right,
You nailed it.
not to be a jerk, but maybe I am. I don't know.
You nailed it, Neil. And I haven't thought about it until now. That was my exit. I know this though. When the Raiders did finally let me go, I felt a similar sense of relief as I did on draft day. And there was elation on draft day, and there was a hint of elation when they let me go, because I was so done with that life. And then I did not know, what was in store for me. I just knew I was done doing that. And it wasn't what what can you expect? I mean, you cannot, even though I come from a football family, I come from going to training camps with my dad when he was with the Rams and throwing with Ram guys when I was in the 7th grade. And I tell my son that, just like, can you even imagine he's in the 7th grade now, me taking you over to the Rams and actually throwing fades and throwing slants to Preston Denard and all these like legends. It's unthinkable. And I still had no idea what I was stepping into. And I don't think anybody really can until they're there. It's been hard for me because if it was up to me, I would not let my son Barron, and I don't let him play tackle football. He's a flag guy. And if there's one real social statement that I want to make, it is absurd and asinine to put a helmet on a child and think it's funny and think it's cool and think it's the right thing to do. There is no way on this planet that strapping frickin' warrior helmets on little kids is something that is preparing them to play high school football. It's absolutely a lie and dangerous. It really needs to be discussed because what we're doing is creating brain damage. And I think if parents realized the truth or were told the truth, that these helmets, even though we're living in this futuristic technology age, they're not helping the matter. And I don't think you can even build something that's going to help, because you could change the rules to how they tackle, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, there are going to be head-to-head serious blows. And what I used to think was, these kids can't deliver a blow. They don't have that speed to create any damage. Wrong. And it's happening every day. And the only thing that I can control is I voice it to my son, is that usually it's not an option until you get into high school. And as we're getting closer to high school, I'm starting to go, geez, it's 2 years away. I have to breathe, let go. He's going to make his decisions of what he wants to do. But I had to step in at this Pee Wee football, junior All-American, just complete BS. Sorry, I'm a little strong on that.
No, I appreciate you sharing.
When do we let our kids drive cars that are, as we know, death machines? We kind of wait. We don't do it early. 16 is kind of a good age. And I don't even know if 16, the brain's fully developed, and it's probably still a risk. But when we're doing it before 16, that's just asking for it.
Well, and I know in Oregon, once you get your license, you can't have anyone in the car with you for a while. There's some provisional licensing. And
right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Can't have the radio going, things like that. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to fix that. Yeah.
Neil, for me, it's about what are we doing to protect our kids? And I don't want to get political or anything. It is saddening. It's devastating. Kids just bringing weapons to school. That right there, everybody should, I think, hit the brakes and go, let's come up with a solution to this. Because if the school's not safe, what the hell are we doing? And if we're not protecting kids from predators and just in all aspects, we need to protect our children. And what I'm doing today is I'm protecting my kids. And that's all I can do. But I think we need a group conscious on this in communities about how we can protect our kids, because this is the last thing I'll say is, because of my history with substance abuse, you would be shocked at the number of broken people that I have met over the years through a treatment center after treatment center, is that they have been abused. It's the number one. It's a correlation that you cannot fucking deny, is that almost 99% of these people that are struggling have been abused as kids, either verbally, sexually, physically, emotionally. And it makes sense. You're damaging the youth. How are they going to turn out? They are going to self-medicate. It's freaking natural. They're not criminals. So yeah, I'm off my soapbox, but I'm passionate about it because I've seen a lot of people hurting.
No, I can hear that. And I love that. I really do.
Yeah,
I love
you.
that. Don't apologize
Cool.
for that. Never apologize. It's your perspective. That's what the show's all about. We try to land this plane as best I can. And first off, I want to say again, thank you so much, Todd, for coming on.
You're welcome.
Greatest moment for you has been what?
My kids, both of their birth by far, they've saved my life.
So, I mean, you think about an NFL touchdown, you think about running for a touchdown in the Rose Bowl. None of that compares to being a dad, is what I'm hearing you say?
100%. It's the greatest position I've ever held, is being a dad.
So is Todd Marinovich worth saving?
Hell yes.
Why?
and thank God the people close to me believe that, because my actions over the years would have driven the faint of heart away. And it did a lot of people, but not everybody gave up. And thank God for my mom. You know, she's 77, could be canonized for her love and tolerance with me for the last 52 years. It's there's nothing like a mother's love, and I owe it all to my mom.
That's awesome. I know your dad has recently passed. I do want to say,
yes,
I acknowledge that. And
yeah, thank
Marv,
you.
that's who he was referring to earlier. If you guys are wondering, that's who he was talking about, was his dad, Marv. You don't ever call him dad, right? You've never called him dad?
You know what? I would go back to, I started doing it because around the house, there were always NFL guys. In the summers, he would have 3-4 NFL guys either staying or bringing him over to work out. And they all called him Marv. And I thought it was funny. And so I just kind of followed suit, probably about the age of my son, 11, and it stuck. And I called him Marv throughout most of my upbringing. And then it switched when he became my best friend. He called me Buzzy and I called him Buzzy. We are finally, Neil, this is a plug now, a documentary that we've been filming for 8 years will be released next year, and it's called Buzzy. And it's about the golden hour of my dad's life. And he was suffering from Alzheimer's. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but people are going through it. It was really tough to see, especially how our relationship grew and we were as tight as we've ever been. And I really enjoyed being around him. Then he forgot who I was. So this film is captured the rawness of the struggle of my addiction, plus my relationship with my father. It's the real deal. And not to say the Marinovich Project wasn't, it was just what it was. And it reached a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that. It changed my life with my art, because I'm an artist, and it alluded to that in the Marinovich Project. At the end, me and my dad are standing, and we're at one of my first art shows in LA. That just opened the door when Netflix picked it up, and people are contacting me from freaking all over the world wanting art. That would have never happened. So I am grateful to that film. But this one, we did that one in a year. This one's been 8. So there's a lot there. And what it is it's not polished. It's not Hollywooded. It's just the real deal. We're excited about it. I've been waiting a long time, like decades, to record an album, because I like to write music and play a little bit. And so me and my kids are taking a trip. I mentioned this, up to Oregon to record this album. And I am like a schoolgirl. I am giddy and can't believe it. I've had tears of joy that I got to share with my mom about. I can't even believe it that it's here, but it's happening. Couldn't be more stoked.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. And I mean that in all sincerity.
Thanks, Neil.
Considering everything you've walked through, the ridicule, the persecution, a lot of it self-induced. Let's be honest. A lot of it was self-induced.
Yes. Right.
But to walk on the other side of that is so powerful to me. And again, just such a joy to hear. All right, here's our last official question, I promise. Then we're going to play a game together, because I know you're a competitive guy. Games are fun, right? All right, so here we go. Last question, then I want to play this game with you that's really fun. So, by the way, do you know the seating capacity of the LA Coliseum? Just offhand?
It's changed over the years, but it was when I played probably around 96 or 7,000.
Okay. Well, now they have it at 78,467. So they've dropped it down a little bit.
Sure.
Nowhere near the big house at Ann Arbor. Nowhere near that. Just want to put that out there. I think you're even bigger than Keenan Memorial in Carolina. So there we are too. Todd, if I somehow created an event for you to go and speak to people from all walks of life who have maybe battled with addiction, maybe battled with, an overprotective parent, an bearing parent, a helicopter mom, whatever it may be, somebody that has walked through pain and suffering of you talked about the neglect, the abuse and all that. We get you 50-yard line. Maybe we put the SC Trojan out there as part of the event. What would you say in that moment to those folks?
I could only share my experience. I'm not going to advise. I'm not going to lecture. God, I hated enduring lectures. So I wouldn't do any of that. The only thing that I would like to convey is how the simple truth of honesty has changed my freaking life. People might think, well, that's too simple, but the best stuff is the simplicity. I try to keep my life as simple as possible, and it all is based in that simple truth of being honest, first off with me, and then with everybody else. Like I said, it's the most liberating thing when you can completely expose yourself, and no pun intended, because I have been arrested skinny dipping. That was my last arrest. I can kind of thank God that I put the shovel down, so to speak, in digging holes for myself. And that was the most humiliating experience I've had in my wreckage that I've created, was skinny dipping in some person's pool that I didn't even know because I was skateboarding and worked up a sweat. That's another story. Exposing myself, not in that way, but in a vulnerable way of sharing myself with you. There is God in that, and there is magic in that. And I'm not a religious person, but I just know what I experience. And there's a connection there when all the walls are dropped and I can see you and you can see me. That's love. I think I would encourage people to take that chance with somebody that either there's conflict or there's animosity or hatred, to be the first one to say, to be honest. It's the freaking thing is, man, we can talk about it for days, but really putting this stuff into practice takes courage and balls. Well, that's kind of the same thing. On the other side, I'm here to say that just for me, it's worth all the fear that is stored up around it. And it's never as bad as I create it in my head. As long as I just take that first step and that first action toward it, it's never as bad as I create it to be.
Oh, that's good. I think you'd get a standing ovation again. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would applaud. I would have to wear an SC shirt, which I don't know if I'd be excited about. Do they have SC shirts in Carolina blue? Just asking for a friend. So, Todd, let's play a game together. This is a game I like to call Senseless in my famous North Carolina Cup. Great segue there. So here we go. 5 senses. I believe you know that we have 5 senses, right? So here we go. Number 4 is, what's a sound or noise that you love to hear? Sound or noise that you love to hear?
Oh, playing the G string on the acoustic guitar.
All right.
It's my favorite.
I was thinking like your kids, but yay, we'll go with that. Acoustic guitar, maybe a cheer after a touchdown. There weren't too many of it. Sorry, that was bad. That was mean. That was mean-spirited. So guys and gals, kids and campers alike, sports fans or not, I don't know about anyone else. I feel like today we heard the heart of a man that has walked a journey with thorns and roses along the way. Now, I don't know about anybody else. I really love the part where he talked about making that first step, getting vulnerable, walking into the truth. There's something powerful about that. So here's my challenge to you today. Who in your life, who's on that list that you could go be vulnerable with, to really share a truth with? Are you willing to do that? If you are, let me know. opspodcast.com. Drop me a little note there. We, of course, would love to hear about it. If you don't like to write things down, which I get, drop us a little voicemail too. You can do that at our website, opspodcast.com. And I just want to say this, as I say so often, remember this. Do not ever forget. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.